Hey book friends, so I have a really fun video for you today, or at least I hope it's fun. I think it's really interesting. I think it's fun to kind of look into these things. And so my plan for this video is to look back on all of my book hauls, which I have been doing book hauls since the beginning of 2020 when I started my old channel, which is Science Mama. And I'll put my link down below if you wanted to look at any of these videos, because prior to this past December, that's where all my book videos were. But anyway, I looked back on all of those book haul videos and I asked myself the question, have I been reading the books that I haul? And it's a fun question to ask. So what I decided to do is take my book hauls from 2020 and my book hauls from 2021 and look at them, assess how many books I've read, kind of give it a percentage, all those things. It's fun to see because sometimes I feel like I get too many books and I'm not actually reading them, but I want to see if that's true or not. So let's jump into the video and we can find out together. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you're new, or welcome back if you've been coming for a while. So like I said, we're going to dive into whether or not I read the books I haul. And personally speaking, I'm not really worried about like getting my physical TBR down to 0. I don't really care. I actually do like having a decent amount of choices to pick from my bookshelves. So that's not why. I'm just curious if I'm reading what I'm buying. So that's a good question to ask. So I will start putting up pictures of the thumbnail as I talk about the book haul videos. So we'll start with my first one here, which was my first book haul ever I did on my channel, and it's from January of 2020. I mean, first off, can you see how short my hair was? I decided in January to start growing out my hair. So that's pretty impressive. Let's start there. But as for the books, you can see it was a pretty small stack. I started myself small. There was only 6 books on that stack, but I have read 5 of them. And actually the top 3 are read alouds for my kids, but I did read aloud the top 2. So I'm counting that. I'm for the most part not counting my books that I buy for kids and homeschool, but since I read that one out loud, I am counting it. So I read 5 of 6, which is pretty good. And I actually think that was the best ratio I have of all of these. So it goes a little downhill from here. But I also wanted to look at these books and say which one was my favorite. And from that stack, this book was my favorite. I loved this one. And so that's All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. And it is a World War II historical fiction book following 2 kids. One's a blind girl from Paris who escapes to the countryside, and one's a orphan boy in Germany who gets pulled into like the Hitler Youth. And their stories go from there and kind of converge, and it's just a beautifully written book. So that's my favorite from that book haul. And so this book haul was from March of 2020, and it was mostly historical fiction and some thriller mystery type books thrown in there as well. So there was 9 books total here, and I read 6. So that was also fairly good. But as I'm looking at this picture, I loved some of these books. And so I'm only going to kind of highlight one from each of these stacks, but there were a number in this stack that I loved. But the one I want to share with you as my favorite is really this whole series. So I'm going to say this one, which represents 3 books, but it's The Bear in the Nightingale series by Catherine Arden. Oh my gosh, I still love these books. And I think I will do a reread of these books because I just really enjoyed them. It is a fantasy historical fiction series set in like the 1600s in Russia, and our main character Vasya has some magical abilities passed on through her mother and that she starts to foster, and there's also a lot of elements of some Russian folklore that is brought in, including some like house spirits as well as like the frost demon, which she has interactions with. And so good, you guys. So good, the whole series. This one starts a little slow. That's a lot of people's complaint. I don't mind. I like a slow build up, but I really enjoyed the whole series. So that was my favorite from that book haul. So as for the next book haul, so this happened kind of in the springtime. I think it was April of 2020. There was 10 books total and I read 7. So again, not too bad. I was pretty good at reading the books I bought when I first started BookTube. See that changes a little bit, but for now, it was really good. And there are a number of good books on here. And I almost picked Mistborn, which is, you can see here on the top, but I actually got rid of that copy because I bought the whole set of the UK covers and I love them. So technically that book in particular wasn't the one I read, but so many good books. So a book I do love in that stack is this one. So Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. Guys, This is a great one to pick up, even if you don't read a lot of middle grade. If you like Harry Potter, this is a for sure you should pick this up, because it's about this girl named Morgan who was like destined to die on her 11th birthday. She's like a cursed child, but then this man named Jupiter North comes in and like swoops and takes her away to a place called Nevermore, and she is competing to be a part of a school, the Wondrous Society, and it goes from there. And it is an excellent magic school setting. It's a fantastic book. I've been enjoying the whole series, and I'm excited for the next one to come out. But so that was my third book haul of 2020. Okay, and then this one hops to July of 2020, and this is my birthday month, which tends to have more books bought around that time. I feel like I can treat myself during my birthday month. So there are, let's see, 16 books on there, and I only read 9. So that's a little bit less of a percentage, but there's still some amazing books on this list, as well as some books I really still want to read, like The Martian and Rebecca. Oh, there's so many good ones. But as for a book that I loved that I bought during this haul, was The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. I just recently read this, maybe like the end of 2021. And I can't believe it took me so long to read it, but it is an excellent book. It's about the traveling library. It's about these just women who go up into the mountains of Kentucky and bring books to people who couldn't afford it. And it's just a beautifully told story. And in this one in particular, I really attached to the women and some of their challenging stories. And so, excellent book. I loved this one. As for my last book haul in 2020, so it was in September of 2020. Again, it was a big historical fiction book haul, and there's so many good ones on here, like The Other Einstein, there's The Great Alone, there's a couple I really want to read. I want to read Beneath the Scarlet Sky. As for a book that I really liked and read from that stack, it was this one, which I haven't talked a lot about recently, but I have fond memories of it. It's called The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. It is about a nurse in Dublin during the 1919 Spanish flu, and she is on the maternity ward, and it's set over just a number of days, but it follows the hardships of the maternity ward during the flu pandemic and how pregnant women are particularly susceptible, and also followed a lot of the medicine at that point and the things they were doing to help these women. You're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy we have modern medicine to birth babies these days. But this was just such an excellent book, and I really enjoyed it. Being a microbiologist, I loved hearing a historical fiction story about the Spanish flu, so I loved this book. So many books on that list. So that was 2020. So I hauled a total of 49 books, and I read 32 of them. So that was actually 65%. So that's, I read 2/3 of the books I bought in 2020. I'm actually pretty proud of myself. That's a pretty good number in my opinion. I basically read 2 of every 3 books. So that's not bad. I think that's pretty excellent, and I found some really good ones during 2020. So I'm pretty proud of those numbers. But let's shift to 2021 and see how that went. Okay, so starting off 2021, I did a book haul in February of 2021, which was when I was helping host Historathons. So this is a lot of historical fiction books. I think it honestly is because anytime I help host a readathon of any kind, I get so many recommendations from you guys that I'll just buy a few too many books. I hauled a total of 20 books, and I have read 12 of the 20, which isn't bad. And one of the favorites on there, as I was looking at all of them, is this one. So, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is just a fun book. It is a historical fiction book, but it doesn't read totally like that. I feel like it straddles like contemporary and historical fiction because it's about this woman who's a movie star in the 50s and how she gains her fame. Like, what does she do? And so in this book, when she's later in her years, she's telling a journalist all of her stories, but there is some connection with this journalist that you're trying to figure out the whole time. So it is really fun, really entertaining. I highly enjoyed reading the Evelyn Hugo book. So that was the first book haul. But there's actually only 3 book hauls in 2021 as opposed to 5 book hauls in 2020. So as for the second book haul of that year, it was in March. So it was kind of a half homeschool as well as a half personal books, like my own books sort of book haul. And so I did not count all the homeschool books, obviously. I only counted the books that were for me, or some of the middle grade books that I also wanted to read, I counted on my list. So for that list, there was 14 books that were for me, and I've only read 5 of those so far. So I'd say that book haul wasn't as on target. It probably was a book outlet haul. Honestly, I sometimes get drawn into book outlet and I want to pick up some books and they all sound good, but I kind of cover by some of them and things like that. So anyway, 5 of 14 isn't as good, but I did pick up a few good ones from there. And one of those was this one. It's called The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is a beautifully written historical fiction book. Although Book of the Month marketed it as more fantasy, I felt like it was more historical fiction with a little bit of fantasy in there. But it was an enjoyable book. It's about this woman in present day who finds out her husband's cheating on her. She goes on this trip. She finds like this vial in the mud of the river in London, I think. And it starts her investigating what was going on here. It leads to this apothecary that was rumored to be for women, but for women who wanted to like poison their husbands or something like that. And so then you hop back in time and you start following the main character of the woman who runs the apothecary to help women get rid of their problems, sort of idea. And it is a fascinating book. I really enjoyed the back and forth. I really enjoyed the historical aspect, less the present day aspect, which is probably why I think I only gave this 4 stars. But I really did like the story, and it was a very fun, atmospheric read. So I'd say this was my favorite one from that book haul. And then my last book haul from 2021 was in the summer. It was in August of 2021, and it was more of my birthday book haul because my birthday is end of July. And so I had a number of books in that book haul. And again, some of them were for homeschool and some were for myself. As you can see in the picture, like this side was more for homeschool, but that's okay. That's part of my life too. But as I was counting, I bought 13 books for myself, and I only read 3 of them. So again, not as great of a percentage here in 2021, but one of the books I picked up I just loved, and I read this recently, I think the beginning of this year, so Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. It's a World War II story about really 3 women that kind of make up this story, and they all have their own storyline. It's during World War II. One is a doctor in the Nazi camps, one is a rich girl in America, and another is a poor Polish girl who gets taken to the concentration camp. And it's really focused on the concentration camp and what they were doing and some of the experiments they were running. And it was told from all those different points of view, which really enhanced the story. And I was just blown away by it. I found it very, very interesting. And I was really rooting for the young Polish girl who was in the camp. It was just a very moving book. So I highly recommend this if you're in the mood for a World War II historical fiction book about women, which was really fun. So that was the book that was my favorite from that last book haul. And so if I count up the books here, it is a total of 47 books. So I bought about the same number of books as I did in 2020, but I only read 20 of them. And so it was only 42% instead of 65%. So I clearly did a better job of selecting books I wanted to read in 2020 versus 2021. But in all fairness, 2021 was a challenging book year for me. I stopped making a lot of book content kind of middle of the year. My husband was having some health problems. I was more focused on the homeschool content, and I was just kind of transitioning in there. And I'm really happy that since then I've landed on like splitting out the book content and the homeschool content. And now I have this channel, which I just love to chat about books with you all. And it's just been such a joy. And I've since started this channel, I've had 3 book hauls, which I won't go into because I haven't had time to read those. So that's not really fair. But I had time to read all my books from 2020 and 2021. And so it's an interesting question to ask if I'm actually reading my haul videos. But my takeaways from this small experiment was to say that I think I'm not reading as many books from, say, my book outlet hauls as I am from like book of the month. I actually do a pretty good job of book of the month, or if I had my eye on a specific book as opposed to like a cover by through book outlet, if you understand what I'm talking about. So I think this was really fun, and I answered the question if I read what I haul, and I think I do a pretty good job. I used to do a better job, but it all makes sense. And so I hope you found this interesting. I'm sure a number of you, while you watch haul videos, are like, are you guys even reading the books you're hauling? And so at least I can answer that for the past 2 years. So I hope you found this as entertaining as I thought it would be to look into this stuff. And if you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you want to. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next book video. Okay, guys, take care.